Welcome everyone to a special edition of Around the Best Town. I'm Craig Coughlin. I'll be hosting the show this evening. Your normal host, Mayor McCormac, will be with us, but he's going to be a guest today because we have some questions for him. On March 10th, Woodbridge voters will be asked to approve an $87 million bond referendum for improvements to the school district and to provide for enhanced security. To talk with me about that today are Dr. Robert Zega, Superintendent of Schools for Woodbridge, and of course our own Mayor, John McCormac. John, how's it feel to be sitting on the other side?
It's not very unusual for me, but I'll get over it.
Well, it's nice to have both of you here. As I said at the top of the show, the voters in March will be asked to approve a bond referendum to do it, to improve the condition of the schools in district. Dr. Zega, can you walk through the improvements that are going to be made?
Sure, Craig. The highlight of the referendum is School 4 and 5. That's one of our oldest schools in the district. School 4 is over 100 years old. And we're going to be replacing that school, building on a different location down off of Rowway Avenue. And that will replace the existing School 4 and 5, and those students, after the school is built, will be relocating over there. Other highlights of the referendum include a large addition onto School 28, a large addition onto School 25, Lafayette Estates and Fords, where your kids went, I believe.
That's exactly right.
And then we're going to be connecting the 5 different buildings at School 22 Lindcrest in Colonia. That school was built as 5 separate buildings where the students have to walk.
Yeah, the campus. So that's the way it was at 25.
Correct. We had 4 schools built that way: 22, 23, 24, and 25. We've already connected 23 and 25. Now we hope to connect 24, which requires only one hallway to connect it, but School 22 require kind of a network of hallways. Other things, throughout the district, we're going to provide each school with safety and security money, and that will be used to address new cameras, better cameras, front door kind of remake or securing the front door entrances a little bit better using locks and additional doorways. A big one is JFK, the field house will get a renovation. Right now that field house is no longer or never has been ADA accessible. So we want to make sure that we bring that up to compliance. But each school, whether it's ceilings at School 1, Morby Street in Woodbridge, or it's additional parking or additional paving, every school is going to get something.
Now, why now? Why this time? We did a bond referendum back in 2017. Have done lots of work on 3 of the schools. Why this referendum? Why now?
Well, the 2017 referendum addressed 2 of our oldest schools, Ross Street, which was 100 years old, and parts of Woodbridge Middle that were they were all additions that were various ages. But right now, the first phase of Ross Street is completed, and that's a brand new school. That's one of the nicest schools in the state by far. It's one of the nicest buildings in the state. And Woodbridge Middle underwent an extensive renovation that just opened up in January, and that school is completely different from what it used to be. It's unrecognizable. People remember the I-beam in the middle of the gym. That's no longer there. Now it has a full-size gym. The gym floor is actually a high school-size floor. But those were, at that point in 2017, we had 5 buildings that were either 100 years old or approaching 100 years old. 2 of them were addressed in the 2017 referendum, and then the last 3 will be addressed here. I didn't mention School 14. School 14 is 96 years old, and that school will actually, it's our smallest elementary school, and it requires so much renovation that we've decided to close that school and move those kids over to 25.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But John, people will ask, how are we going to pay for this? $87 million is a lot of money, and it's a broad-based plan. But how do we go about paying for it?
Well, we've done very well attracting economic development projects to town. We paid for all the fields between 2013 and 2017 with the money from those projects, primarily the big CPV power plant and a couple of warehouses. We're paying for the 2017 referendum primarily with all the downtown redevelopment projects that are coming in. Neither one of them cost the taxpayers any money. This project will be paid for by one warehouse project. It's going to be run by the Mars companies. We bought land from the state of New Jersey last June for $5 million. We picked up the 54-acre site that was once Woodbridge Developmental Center, and then we got a sliver of land, 9 acres from Conrail for $2 million. So we were into this for $7 million. We then went out to find a developer, knowing it wasn't going to be an office building, it wasn't going to be retail, it wasn't going to be apartments. It really lends itself to a warehouse because there's warehouses all over Rahway, Carteret, all over the Avenel section. It's close to Route 1, it's close to the Turnpike. So we found a company to come in and give us a pretty large sum of money for the land, and we are going to use that money plus the money we're going to get from property taxes just from one warehouse, which the day they open they'll pay us $2 million a year. Growing up to the 30th year they'll pay us $4 million. So you take, that's an average of 3 over 30 years, $90 million plus the money we got for the land, and we can, and plus they're giving us the land for the school because they bought Premier Diecast on Rahway Avenue, which is right in front of the developmental center. So they'll actually be a neighbor to the school. They're giving us cash and they're giving us that piece of land, and the taxes, put that all together, and one project can pay for this whole entire referendum, including the big school at 4 and 5, and that's just wonderful for the taxpayers because nobody's taxes will go up because of this project. It will all come from one single warehouse project.
Wow, that's remarkable. So let me ask the question that some people will ask, why bond? Why not just pay for it out of pocket?
Well, because you get state aid on debt service. You don't get state aid if you pay cash. So technically, when I say the money we make from the land sale is going to go, technically the money from the land sale will pay down other debt and will borrow the full amount of the referendum, the full 74 million minus 13 million in state aid. We'll borrow the full 74 million and then get that 13 to pay. So it just because of the way the state law works, they don't pay you for what you paid to construct it. They pay you for what you borrowed, what you're paying back on your borrowed money to construct it. So it's a little technical, but it's the way to do it because we get 13 million for free.
So Dr. Zega, we in Woodbridge here, and I use that because I'm proud to be a resident and feel some ownership in it. We've been successful at completing these projects, right? You talked about the work that was done at Ross Street. You talked about the work done to Woodbridge Middle, also the old St. Cecilia's School. Woodbridge Township undertook those renovations. They've been very successful, haven't they?
Yes, they have, and one of the things that we didn't mention was full-day kindergarten. That was all part of that 2017 referendum, and that's something that the residents of Woodbridge have been asking for years.
And we know how important that is. Study after study after study tells us how critically important it is.
Absolutely. We're seeing the gains, the academic gains of those students now.
And all this work is new work, so Woodbridge Middle School was a challenge, and so was St. Cecilia's, because every time you took a wall down in a 60-year-old building, you find cracks, you find asbestos. It was just a nightmare. Those projects were very difficult. They got done, or getting done, but they're very difficult. At least the work in this new referendum is all new work, so we're not doing much with existing buildings.
So lots of new stuff and upgrading places that are in need of repair, right? So everybody gets something except for those 3 new schools, I would suspect.
The only thing
right?
we missed was the STEM labs in all the middle schools.
Correct.
Oh yeah, that.
That's a huge thing.
That's a huge thing. That's why I was so glib about it, because that really is important to advancing it to becoming a top-notch school district. Right?
Right. Woodbridge already has it by virtue of it being brand new, but the other 4 middle schools will get it. I think as will 25 in the addition.
Yes.
So that's the wave of the future is STEM.
And security interests is sadly, I think that's something that has to be at the top of everybody's mind when they're going through this project. Talk about why we need that.
Well, right now we're certainly, as a district, with our partnership with the Woodbridge Police, we're at the forefront of security in the state. With our patrols and our surveillance and our overall security, but you can never have enough. our number one responsibility to the parents is to keep the kids safe while they're with us. So, looking at cutting edge products and cutting edge practices to make sure our schools are safe, you can never have enough investment in that.
And we're also adding 5 more new police officers. We have 210 now. With the next budget for fiscal 21, we'll add 5 more. With fiscal 22, we'll add 5 more. And one of the things in our minds as we go through these decisions is putting more resources out at the schools, because that's like Dr. Zega said, that's one of our main focuses and responsibilities.
So the referendum is scheduled for March 10th, right? If it passes, when would the work begin on these projects?
March 11th. I mean, not work, but go ahead.
Yeah. We'd have to follow the bid process. If all goes well, we hope by the end of the calendar year. Okay. Some of the smaller projects we can get going a little bit quicker.
Yeah, some of them can start quickly, yeah.
Maybe, some of the ceiling projects that aren't as extensive, maybe, and the paving and things like that, we could probably, if all goes well, get them in over the summer.
Okay. I should mention that people vote where they regularly vote, and it's from 2 to 8 p.m. And if anybody wants a mail-in ballot because they can't get out that day or are going to be away that day, they follow the normal process of voting by mail. So we're figuring a lot of people are going to do that.
So let me ask you some of the questions that people may have concerns about as they go through. One of the things we hear about all the time is new students. Woodbridge downtown, for example, is undergoing a real renaissance. Are these projects likely to add new students to the district?
They'll give us room in case we have new students, but they're not designed for that.
Okay.
The projects that we've seen in town add minimal students. I believe the Avenel project is maybe in the 50s. Maybe.
Avenel, Station Village, and the Grand and Metro Park have a combined 500 units open right now and occupied, and there's only 58 students. I would say that if that was housing anywhere else in town, both are next to a train station.
Right.
And transit villages just simply do not produce the same percentage of students on a per unit basis as more the outskirts of town projects. We don't expect to see a lot, but Ross Street capacity went up by 150.
Yes.
Woodbridge Middle School capacity went up. St. Cecilia's has 500 and some odd kids, and it used to house 1,500 kids when it was St. Cecilia's. Right. And then you have more capacity in 25 now, more capacity in 28, and of course 4 and 5 is going to be built with another 150. So all told, between the 2 referendums, you've added desk capacity of about 1,000. Mm-hmm. And I don't think anybody's wildest imagination could any downtown housing projects or anything else that's going to bring kids in approach anywhere near that number. So we're fine. And the other thing to remember is we have less kids today than we had 13 years ago.
Right.
Literally less kids. When I became mayor in November of '06 to this latest count, we're down students. So we're stable, down if anything, but stable. There's not a problem with the population of students here. We can handle everything.
Dr. Day, will this cause any sort of redistricting of students?
No, right now that's not in the plan.
So one of the things you talked about was moving school 14 into school 25. School 14's been there forever, institution. When would that likely begin?
We wouldn't move them obviously until the addition was built. Right now we're projecting a little over 2 years, so at the earliest September 2022.
Okay. And what will happen to the School 14 site?
Right now it's going to be some sort of recreation area. Mayor, I think Mayor can talk to this.
We've committed it's not going to be apartments, it's not going to be retail, it's not going to be anything except some sort of expanded recreational playground type use. We've had our engineers look, and there's all kinds of different things you can do that the kids would love, like obstacle course, playgrounds, and other things. And the other important amenity is whatever parking there will be inside. Right now, there's limited parking inside. So when people in the morning, I'm told, the 20 minutes of drop off and pick up in the afternoon
Yeah.
is a nightmare anywhere near there because the car's double parked and you can't get through, and God forbid anything ever happened where you needed an emergency vehicle to get through there. But it's really terrible. So I think the neighbors, even if they don't have kids in school, will like the idea of there not being that kind of traffic in their neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's, as you know, it's close to where I live, and I go through that intersection an awful lot of time, and you have to be really circumspect when the kids are coming in and out. There's adorable little ones everywhere, and parents trying to get there to get them out of school. So
we're actually going to meet with the kids in 14 and show them some ideas and kind of get the feel for what they think, because even though they're going to go to 25,
right,
they're still going to live there. They all walk there now.
Yeah.
So they'll be walking to the playground, whatever we put there, and we're also going to talk to the neighbors and see what they think should go there.
And for folks who are not familiar with it, School 25 and School 14 are literally within a mile of each other, right? Probably less.
Less than a mile.
Yeah, so they won't be moving too far down the road. What's going to happen to the 4 and 5 site? That's a pretty big piece of property there, right?
We're looking at possibly moving our administration building. Our administration right now is housed in the oldest school in the district, well over 100 years old. And we're looking to possibly move our administration building over to the 4 and 5 site, along with some other non-instructional programs like our trades could move over there. Right now our trades are housed at Avenel Middle and at Woodbridge High. They actually take up some instructional space. So if we could move them over to the old 4 and 5 site and the administration building, that would free up the property where the administration building is now, and also free up classroom space in those two schools.
And that building's in as bad a shape as Fort Avenue School, the administration building. It's very, very badly, it's in bad shape.
Right, it's been a long time. It's been there for a while. For folks at home, I'm a senior citizen. I don't have any kids in the district. Why would I want to vote in favor of this?
Well, you're going to sell your house someday. And when you do, the people that are looking to buy your house are probably going to be parents with kids, young kids, or plan to have young kids, and they're going to want a neighborhood or a town with good schools. The school's got to look good. It's got to have the curb appeal. They can't. In the past, you would drive past some of our schools. I think of 4 and 5, the existing one. Up until several years ago, that just looked awful. Some of these schools, even the fields, we talked about the fields back in 13 to 17. We did a whole bunch of work on the fields. You got to have curb appeal. You've got to have something people want to look at. Then they'll go inside and talk to the principal and meet teachers and see if they want to send their kids there. But if you don't have schools and fields and everything around the property that looks good, forget about it. No one's going to want to go to these schools. So you've got to make the improvements in the infrastructure. And if you're a senior citizen and you own a home, someday you're going to sell it. And that's where you're going to realize, first of all, you're not going to pay for it because the warehouse pays for it. But at the end of the day, your property value is going to go up by thousands and thousands of dollars because of this referendum.
And the projects will still go on. Things like you've made, Mayor, you have made sure that as new development came to the community, that the school facilities that the town can share with them has been something that you've worked on to bring together as a partnership with the schools, so that the improved facilities for everybody and be able to invest in those things. Those kind of things are still going to happen, right?
Yes. We said from 13 to 17, we spent $40 million of money. Again, it was covered by taxes from warehouse projects like the power plant. But we did every turf field in the high school, softball turf field, baseball turf field, and a football soccer turf field. They all got tracks, they all got tennis courts. They got interior gym use, they got auditorium seating, all the things that the general public uses, we are allowed to pay for. They're not covered by state aid, so we didn't have to go through a referendum. We just did them, and we pay for them with the money we make from these projects too. So there's no taxpayer impact on them. But it's all part of the plan. When you used to drive through Colonia High School and look down at those fields, I mean, it was just terrible. You were principal there. I mean, it was awful looking. And then now it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So realtors tell us they would not drive anybody looking for a house in Colonia through Colonia High School on purpose, because they were embarrassed what the fields looked like and what the building looked like and what the grounds looked like. That was a minefield, the parking lot, and the road around it. So now it's the first place they take them is through the school.
That's a big deal change. So what makes you think that this, I know there's the last referendum passed, but in many, many communities, referendums for school improvements don't meet with success. So give me your prediction. Take out the crystal ball, Dr. Zega. Is it going to pass?
The fact that there's no tax impact and the fact that you're getting all these things to improve our school district, I don't think there's an argument against it. I think if you live in the neighborhood of downtown Woodbridge and you're young parents with young children, you buy one of these single-family homes, your kids will go to Ross Street School, which is a brand new school, then they'll go to Woodbridge Middle, which is almost brand new, and then they'll go to Woodbridge High School with millions and millions of dollars of facility improvements. You know, and as parents, that's the atmosphere you'd want your children in. So I think that, you know, it's tough to argue against it.
So yes.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
overwhelming yes.
I won't put a number on it, but I'd say an overwhelming yes too, because we're out. Doc and I hit the PTOs. We went to the President's Council last week, which is a group of PTO presidents. Your wife used to be the president of the President's Council. I've gone to the senior centers. I've gone to the senior clubs. And we just talk to everybody about it. Anybody that wants to listen, anybody that will give us an audience, we talk about it. The State of the Township speech, every council meeting we talk about it. So there really is no organized effort against it. You know, I think I understand some of the people in School 14 might be somewhat upset that their school is closing, but being against the referendum doesn't help that, because if it doesn't pass, they still have to do something with School 14. And then you start looking at a referendum that's targeted to a specific area, and they're much harder to pass, because now you say to somebody in Port Reading or somebody in Colonia, we need money for a school in Fords, or you say to people in Fords, we need money for a school in Seawarren, and there's not that broad-based appeal to these referendums like there is. We had full-day kindergarten for everybody, security for everybody, technology for everybody. Now we have even more security for everybody, and each school's getting something. So just because you might be against that plan is really no reason to vote against the referendum, because that's providing the solution to the problem. And so I think it's going to pass, and I think it's going to pass overwhelmingly.
What have been any objections that we've heard from residents when you go into those meetings?
None really. I mean, like Mayor said, I've been at the PTO meetings, and everybody seems pretty agreeable to the entire plan. Like I said, there really isn't a reasonable objection.
There's people that are against everything we do.
Mm-hmm.
So those handful of people are against it. They post on their Facebook accounts and they say things that are not true. They don't understand how the tax incentives work. They don't understand that we get money from every project, even though we give companies a little bit of a break to come here. We have to give them a break to compete to get them here. And then they come in, they clean up brownfield sites, they hire our people, they beautify the buildings and the grounds. They do all these things for us. So the basis of the plan financially is very, very sound. And other than the people that don't like anything we do, and there's not many of them left, other than that small group of people, everybody else is very supportive.
And there's a real positive impact on the educational process by students, right? So if you have a facility that you're proud of and you're happy to go to.
We looked at the preliminary numbers from Ross Street. So attendance is up, discipline is down, the academic performance, we haven't gotten the results on that yet, but just the overall culture of the school, just because those students now, if you remember, Ross Street, their cafeteria was kind of a larger classroom that was down in the basement.
Oh, really? Okay.
And now they eat in a room that has floor-to-ceiling walls and, you know, nice colors and nice light fixtures. It's just to see. We posted some video of the kids when they went in for the first time, and just the way their faces lit up when they walked in.
It's like when what's the show where they moved the bus and the people get to see their
Extreme Makeover, Ross Street Edition.
Yeah, right.
But then when you have new facilities too, it's less maintenance. When you have new fields that are turf, no lawn mowing, no lining, no watering, no seeding, you take all that together, and what are you able to do with, the Chromebooks and the pads and all those things I don't understand how you use?
So because we don't have to maintain and we don't have to find money in our budget to put into these different projects, now that money goes to education. So we were able, in the past couple of years, every one of our 4,000 high school students has a Chromebook. Every one of our 8,000 eighth graders has an iPad that they take home with them. It's a one-to-one program. So we would have never been able to fund that if we were still worrying about how to replace the Woodbridge High School field house, how to, do something with Ross Street. I mean, these buildings are 100 years old. We have to do something with them. They're
Right.
at the end of their life, and to take $30 million out of the operating budget to build a school, that's just impossible.
Yeah. So when you talk about the educational benefit, and you add it with the facilities. Now you still have to maintain the facilities, right? Because that's a mistake I think people sometimes make. They get into something new and then they just ignore it completely. You can't do that. But when you talk about this thing, it really makes it tricky for somebody to say, hey, we shouldn't be doing it, doesn't it?
Well, if you remember, like years ago when the budgets were voted on, and for many years in a row, the budgets were defeated by the voters, the first thing that's cut in the budget generally is the capital investment, because you're going to do this boiler and the budget fails, so it's just easier to get rid of the boiler and do that later than it is to take textbooks away or things like that. So I think a lot of the problems the district has had is as a result of all those years in the 90s and maybe even into the 2000s when there were votes on budgets and they failed, and now we're catching up to all those things because capital was always the first thing thrown out when a budget got defeated.
And the state restructured the school funding formula, which has meant a significant increase in revenue for the school, right?
Absolutely. The past couple of years, the state has been very generous to Woodbridge
Yeah, we were
School
one of the
District.
big winners in the whole formula.
But we had gone all those years underfunded.
Correct.
So in the big picture, we're still not even
Still
breaking
catching
even.
up, yeah.
So we have just a couple of minutes left. Tell me, what would be your wish list for things after we get the renovations, after the bond resolution? What's next for Woodbridge School District?
Well, if we can address these last three schools, our next oldest school is Woodbridge High School, which was built in 1955. So that's relatively middle-aged for a school. So our capital projects would be pretty much done. In the past, outside of the referendum, in every school in the district, we've replaced almost every boiler, every roof, every exterior door, and every window. So after this referendum, we'll be okay as far as the long run. Then we could start, as we have been, focusing on instruction and focusing on curriculum, focusing on career and college readiness.
And I think if we keep getting more and more projects and the schools seem like they've had a sizable investment, there's things we can do. We do roads every year, pave new roads. We can do more. One of the areas we're starting to see that we're falling a little bit behind is flooding. There's so many areas now, it seems like every time there's a lot of rain and a lot of flooding, areas of town that never flooded before get flooded. So we've got a whole list of places, and we're sending an engineer out now to 10 of the worst spots. And each one of those projects could be a pretty sizable fix. So perhaps the next big windfall from these projects will be put toward things like flooding, which makes a lot of sense, and everybody benefits from that.
So before we say goodbye, on the referendum, anybody who wants any more information, where should they reach out?
School website, they can call my office, email me at my office.
What's your number, phone number?
732-602-8472.
They can call us 732-602-6015.
My guests have been Mayor John McCormac and Dr. Robert Zega talking about the school referendum. One way or another, folks, make sure you get out and vote on March 10th. It's an important issue. You should be part of the decision. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time we go around the best town.